Hola amigos de Wine News TV, me encuentro una vez más en el almacén del vino de Fernández con Donald Patz, mi amigo brillante enólogo que hace unos de los mejores Pinot Noirs y Chardonnay de California hace mucho tiempo. Tuvo una compañía, como vieron en el episodio anterior, que fue y es muy famosa, y él ahora está con su proyecto Maritana y también con el proyecto de Secret Door, donde hace Cabernet Sauvignon, unos Cabernet Sauvignon maravillosos que los consigue en el almacén del vino de Fernández. Y le voy a preguntar a Donald un poco cómo se metió en el mundo del Cabernet un Jedi del Pinot y del Chardonnay. Donald, I have you again. Did you get any of that? A little bit?
A little bit. Yeah, I heard Jedi.
Yeah. So I was just saying that, you're very well known. We talked about it in our previous interview for your Pinots and Chardonnays. You've been making them for 40 years. Amazing wines. Each and every one of them that I've had have been amazing. And then as of couple of years ago, and we'll get into that, you decided to make big old cab.
Cabernet is really a beautiful grape. I love drinking it, and I love getting a chance to make it. I actually have a history of working with wineries that made Cabernet. So when I first moved to the Napa Valley, I worked for Flora Springs Winery. Which
of course, Trilogy. They made Trilogy, right?
I was there when we made Trilogy. James Hall and I both worked
This is Napa Valley royalty.
Yeah, so we both worked there and helped them develop the idea of Trilogy, and then we brought it to market. And then after that, I went to work at Girard Winery, and when the Girards still owned it. So I had quite a bit of experience with Cabernet, even though we launched into Pinot Noir with my previous company. Cabernet has never been too far from my fingertips, but probably I would not have done it. Except I met this most extraordinary woman. And she, a Korean woman who was living in Virginia, and we were spending time together. And I was trying to convince her to move to California to be with me. And she says, I don't really like Pinot Noir that much anyway. I'd rather drink Bordeaux or Napa Valley Cabernet. So I said, fine.
What do I do best?
Yeah, fine. I'll tell you what. I'll make Cabernet Sauvignon for you if you move to California to be with me. And so about 6 months later, she moved to California. And so I had this promise hanging over my head, but I couldn't do it when we were, doing Pass and Hall. So when we sold the company in 2016 and I was getting ready to leave in early 2017, this was really paramount in my mind, is that I needed to fulfill this promise of making Cabernet. And so from that promise came the idea of Secret Door, which is 2 single vineyard designated Cabernets, one from Stag's Leap and one from the mountains in the eastern side of the Napa Valley. That vineyard's called Sage Ridge. We're going to taste the Hirondelle today.
Yeah, and so you've been with JML, it's your wife, 11 years, right? You've been together 11 years.
We've been together for 11 years.
So she waited for 5-6 years before you started?
Probably closer to 7 years before we really actually had it. And I've asked her this a number of times. She's, did you really think I was going to make Cabernet Sauvignon for you? And she says, nah, I didn't think you ever would. So I thought it was kind of funny. But more recently, I think I told you this last night, more recently she's added to this story. So for a long time, that was the story I would tell.
Let's get into the story. It's the best thing. And here I have something, as I said in my previous interview, Donald and his wife are friends more than guests in my program. So I have this lovely, lovely token that's going to go into my lawyer office and blogger office and has a personal dedication message. And I want him to touch on this because we're going to talk about the 4LKG. Tell me about this.
Well, my son actually is in computer games, and they have little secret things in computer games they call Easter eggs, and that's an Easter egg on my case. This is the end piece for each one of the wooden cases that we use for Secret Door, and 4LKG looks like some random thing. Yeah. A lot of people think it has to do with weight or something like that. They're trying to figure out what What is
or
for?
legalese, something that the California law makes you put there. Yeah. Code, the
doesn't
California Code of Regulations.
exactly. Probably is something like that.
A lawyer made me put it there.
Yes. But
actually, it was a lawyer who told you not to use.
No,
Go for it. Go for it.
No, that was this JML.
Okay.
But so what it really stands for, it's a little code. My wife is Korean. I love her, and I refer to her frequently as the little Korean girl. I know that that's probably not politically correct, and I apologize if anyone feels offended by this.
It's a term of endearment.
It's absolutely a term, and she likes it actually. She enjoys being, considered so special to have her own little phrase for it. And there's a whole thing about Koreans and nicknames anyway. So what it is it's for, but not the number. It's like the word for. Little Korean girl, 4LKG. In fact, sometimes I just refer to her as LKG, and people know her. But when I was getting ready to do the first wine that we're going to taste, JML, I wanted to
one to the right.
Yeah,
right,
I wanted. I think it's this one to the left. Sorry. I wanted to use LKG on this, and my attorney goes, "Oh no, you're not going to send that out there without any."
So the JML was going to be called Little Korean Girl.
It was just going to be LKG.
LKG.
And then people would have to guess what it was.
Okay.
But yeah, without context, I can see where people would feel uncomfortable about that. In context, I hope that they understand that
it's lovely. Like it's like calling my Caribbean baby to your wife who's from another part. Like it's nice. Like
my little island girl or something
exactly.
Something like that. And hopefully everybody is good with that.
As long as she's good with it and she loves it.
But once you go public with it, then suddenly it becomes a whole different thing.
And JML is her name. John Min Lee.
John Min Lee is her name, yes. Yeah. And she's a wonderful person. And I'm thrilled to be able to dedicate these wines to her.
All right. And Secret Door, the doors, before we taste the wines, how did you come up with the name? Like, I know that you take pictures or have pictures on the labels from different doors all over the world. Tell me about the name, because Maritana has a story behind. Does this have a story behind?
It does. In fact, you're looking at it right here.
Okay.
That door is a secret door between the Aman Hotel and the Summer Palace in Beijing. And if you're staying at the Aman Hotel, they walk you to the back of the property. They unlock this door and let you in, so you don't have to stand in the hour-and-a-half line that's usually waiting to be able to go in and see this. In the Summer Palace, if you haven't been to Beijing and seen this, it's not like Versailles. It's more like Central Park. It's this enormous area with a lake and pagodas and all kinds of things. So it's a spectacular place to visit for sure. But being let in and out through this secret door just stuck in my head. And I took this picture when I was there, going through the door. And I thought, and it would come up on my computer, the sort of screensaver thing.
Like a message from the universe.
It's like, boom, up comes this, picture of your dog and a picture of, the place you were in vacation last year, and then a secret door. So every time it popped up there, the word secret door popped into my head. And I checked when we started this, and nobody was using the name Secret Door, so I thought, that seems like a really cool name. And from that, we evolved into each wine and each vintage gets its own unique door. So the door that you see on the 2018 Hirondelle won't be used again. There'll be a different door for 2019. There'll be a different door for 2021. There is no 2020, so we don't have to worry about that one.
Maybe in the future we'll see a door from Old San Juan.
I would like that. That would really be fun.
That'd be really cool.
Part of the United States, so we can use it. I really want to use more U.S. doors.
Yeah, exactly.
As opposed to, I kind of feel weird about putting doors from but all over the world.
All over the world. Eventually, you have to put something from. You haven't used anyone from the States so far?
Nothing from the United States yet, but I have one. I have one lined up for 2021 vintage. Yeah,
that's awesome. We'll talk about it in the program. So let's get into and I guess that you're also sending, or perhaps implicitly, a message that there's a secret door into your style of winemaking, this grapes, this vineyards. Like, step into the secret door of pleasure and try these beautiful Cabernets. I don't know, maybe I'm making it up, but that's the way I interpret it.
I'm going to use that from now on.
I say, well, there's a secret door into my winemaking philosophy, my style, the wines that I like to drink, because that's been your driving philosophy all throughout your winemaking life. Like, I make the wines that I like to drink. So, were you nervous? Well, you weren't, because you had worked with Gerard and Florida Springs. How do you interpret Cabernet, having been the Pinot Jedi, the Chardonnay Jedi, master of Burgundian grapes? Like, when you first started Secret Door, what kinds of cabs, aside from those that you would like to drink, did you set out to make?
Well, I was really looking for a particular part of the Napa Valley, and so this Hirondelle vineyard is really sort of the centerpiece for my thoughts about Secret Door, because it is an homage to my wife, and I always thought that the area of Stag's Leap produced these wines that were sleeker, more elegant, and I think also complex, but also ageable. That it seemed like that was a fitting place. My wife is all of those things too, so it seemed like it would be a good fit for her personality. But I wanted to do Napa Valley Cabernet as 100% Cabernet Sauvignon.
They're both 100%.
100% Cabernet Sauvignon. And part of which is because we're making really small amounts, trying to blend in other stuff at really small. I mean, how do you get 3 gallons of Merlot or something like that? Doesn't make any sense. But at the same time, I really believe that Napa has the ability to produce complete and complex wines without having to blend. So we pick our grapes, again, probably a little earlier than a lot of my compadres do. And then hopefully the grapes have the proper balance of acidity and pH and structural components to produce a stable and interesting wine. And it goes entirely, very much like making first growth Bordeaux. It goes entirely into brand new barrels. So both wines get the exact same treatment, both the JML and the Secret Door. And then I choose barrels out of the Secret Door program to create the JML wine.
These are both 14% alcohol, and you said Bordeaux, and they feel like a cross between a gorgeous Pauillac with Napa, of course, because they're very elegant. You got that lovely blackcurrant cassis. You got a little bit of mint, menthol freshness. Lovely, lovely nose here. A little bit of cedar, cigar box. It's not just fruit. There's also this pencil shaving kind of thing, and then from the barrel you get the little bit of a cocoa or chocolate, but not sweet. Like certain wines smell sweet. This smells very balanced, very sort of in equilibrium.
I think that one of the things that we talk about a lot in California when you're talking about Cabernet Sauvignon is Cabernet Sauvignon produces a chemical. Many grape varieties do have signature sort of chemicals that define them. And Sauvignon Blanc has the same one. Cabernet Franc, to a lesser extent, has it, but we refer to them as pyrazines. And pyrazines are the thing that make wine smell a little bit like herbs or vegetables if it's really powerfully. And California winemakers tend to be very leery of having much, if any, pyrazines present in their wines. And as the grapes get very ripe, way past the sort of normal zone that you would think you would need to pick, pyrazines fade away. And so you can see in California wines, frequently the alcohol levels are elevated, and or a lot of winemaking goes on in order to bring the alcohol levels back down to an acceptable level by picking super late. And so my thought was, well, this is what Cabernet is.
Yeah.
If it doesn't have some of that, it shouldn't smell like asparagus, of course, but
bell pepper.
Strong bell peppers or jalapenos or something like that. Just, it's not okay. But what I'm looking for is this characteristic I call bouquet garni, which is an interesting combination of dried and fresh herbs, and also sometimes even some flowers mixed in.
Like Provençal
Exactly.
herbs. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's used in France a lot in soups and stews to give this sort of background herbaceous note that's really pleasant. And I think that that's exactly what I'm shooting for in these Cabernets. It should smell, if it doesn't smell, it tastes like a Cabernet. Why is it a Cabernet?
Yeah.
Might as well make a different grape
My
variety.
wife loves your wines, by the way, and you've used her image in your promo materials, and I just love that Wine Wife TV. She says that this is a cab made by a Pinot King, by a Pinot Master, and I can see what she means by that because they're totally different wines, totally different grapes. But I guess what she means is that it's ethereal and restrained. It's rustic and elegant at the same time, and it's not overblown. It's not saturated. And again, I don't want to be politically incorrect, but it's a very feminine Cabernet. I love this Cabernet. It's fantastic. Here at the Almacén del Vino, I think it retails for around $70, and it's fantastic.
That's the JML you're talking
the
about.
JML, exactly. We're gonna get into the secret door a little later on. But
We should, at least mention this label.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah,
that is actually a picture of my wife, and it's really fascinating because we asked a friend of ours who's quite a gifted artist to do this, and really she didn't have any examples other than probably some pictures on the internet, and she absolutely nailed the look of my wife. My wife has those sunglasses, and she has that necklace. And it's really fun to see it. I think a lot of people just think it's a made-up person on that label, but that is in fact JML. That's Jungmin Lee. That's on the picture there.
Yeah, the wine is fantastic, and what a great tribute to your wife. I mean, she waited 5-6 years, but you definitely took it out of the park, took it out of the ballpark.
Thank you.
Delicious wine. What do you pair this with back at home? Like you say, honey, let's open a JML.
Well,
because it has sufficient acidity and freshness to go with something that's not necessarily a tomahawk or a big piece of meat. It's very versatile.
It is. You can certainly go with those.
Of course, of course.
And Koreans love eating meat. And especially barbecued meat. So what they're talking about barbecue is simply grilling. So that works really well, I think. And she does an incredible short rib that's amazing with this. But I'm a believer that you choose the wine and you eat the food, and I'm not convinced that there are perfect matches for anything. It's a perfect night to drink this and eat that, and if they harmonize really well, that's fine. If they're kind of like playing different instruments at different paces, that's kind of okay too.
There's also beauty in that contrast of sorts.
I think so.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get into the Secret Door 2018. In terms of vintage, 2018, because I see that both are from the 2018 vintage. How would you rate or regard that Napa Valley vintage for Cab?
We've had some really, really good vintages. The growing seasons have been fantastic. The problem has been other stuff, not the season. For example, 2017, which is when I started Secret Door, there were massive fires in the Napa Valley, and happily we had already picked our grapes, and they were in barrel before the fires even started. But 2018 is considered, I think, to be one of the best of the recent vintages. Pretty much a perfect growing season. There was no problems with rot or mildew early. It was a glorious fall. We picked these grapes in pretty much perfect conditions, and the end resulting wines, I think, are structured and prepared for the long run. If you have a cellar and a long life ahead of you, these are wines to put away. If you don't, you can certainly drink them with great pleasure today.
JML can withstand 15, 20 years?
I think so. It's really interesting. I really chose barrels for the JML that I thought would be more immediately accessible, a little brighter. I bottled it earlier too, so it's about 6 months less barrel time than the 2018 Hirondelle vineyard that we're tasting. But it's every time I try it, I'm amazed at how well it's holding together and how beautiful this wine is showing now. I think both wines will age gracefully. I obviously believe that the Hirondelle is the greater of the two, but JML is really good.
Yeah, it has a tannic structure to have a long life ahead, and it has good acidity, good freshness, a lot of nerve. I don't see this wine fading out in any time in the next decade. All right, let's get into Secret Door 2018 Hirondelle Vineyard.
Well, Hirondale Vineyard is in the Stag's Leap area, which is relatively far south in the Napa Valley. In fact, I have a book from 1977 where one of the most famous California winemakers, a guy named Andrei Chelichev, who was at BV Winery for many, many years and then was a consultant for many years after that. Very famous guy, really highly regarded, said that this area is too cold to grow Cabernet Sauvignon.
Wow. Global warming, fast forward, global warming 40
it's
years.
it's always been a fantastic area. He was just centered in Rutherford, so there was a little local, showmanship going on here. Of course,
a little bias,
Rutherford's the greatest, and Stag's Leap, they're just okay. But this is right at the base. There's a rock outcropping that is called the Stag's Leap, and this is right at the base of that. So we're basically the beating heart of Stag's Leap at Hirondale.
The aromatics here are just gorgeous, gorgeous. And again, you see that those herbs, that tomato paste. There's obviously the currants, and then the black cherry. Oh my God, a little bit of freshness, mint, menthol. Lots of things happening here. Wow. Again, that balance, that freshness, that equilibrium, like it's hard to achieve that. I've had lots of Napa Cabs, and a lot of them at this price point are very exuberant, very rich, glycerin, power, like Shaquille O'Neal, right? But here you have all of that incredible aromatics, but there's this sophistication to it, this elegance, this I guess restraint, if you will.
Yeah, and I think that the restraint is the word that probably a lot of people would use, but it's not. I don't really think of it as restraining this grape variety, but displaying it in a slightly different way. And it's the wines I used to drink. These are when I first got interested. I'm older, so when I first got interested in wine, I was able to drink some of the really amazing vintages from the 1970s as they were being released. And you cannot recreate those today. No matter what anybody says about, oh, we're making those wines, it's impossible. We're using totally different rootstocks, totally different scion wood. The actual Cabernet clone that's being used is rarely, if ever, the same as what they were using in the 1950s and 1960s, the grapes that eventually produced the 1970 vintages. And the climate has changed. It really has. It's not an enormous difference, but it is different from what it was back then. And the way that we grow the grapes is different. So you can't simply just plug in the techniques that they use. But I think what I was trying to do is reverse engineer it. So start with what I wanted it to be and how the grapes are being grown today, and then create a pathway from those grapes to the kind of wine that I wanted. And it's not exactly like the 1970s, but again, I like the word echo. I think it's something.
An echo of the past.
Yeah, it is. It's a combination of the past and the future. I think for Napa Valley, we can't make. I think the wines that you just described, and they're super popular. Some of those wines are selling.
There's a huge market. Maybe you're losing money by making
something
that's backwards or retro. Yeah,
you're probably right. I'm probably losing money. I probably would get 100-point scores if I made those.
Yeah, those chunky,
5% residual sugar, super rich extracted wines.
Cocoa. It's like they compete with like a Weight Watchers chocolate shake.
Something like that. Yeah.
But this is marvelous. Again, savory. The finish is long, super long. It's pure velvet on your palate. And again, this is a wine that will endure, has a long life ahead of it. We're committing a little bit of a felony here. This is a baby. We're drinking a baby. This is delicious now. Don't get me wrong, it's delicious, but boy, will it be awesome in 10 years.
I think so. I do think that it's going to develop. And, one of the caveats about talking about aging wines is you have to be talking to a group of people who like drinking aged wines.
Yeah.
And most of the people that live in California, for example, have never experienced any significant amount of older wines. They buy and pop the cork and drink them. So if you're going to make wine for today, you need to have that in mind, that probably the majority of this wine is going to be consumed relatively young. But if you like the taste of older wine, and it does change, it's not just, oh, it adds this whole new dimension. It does, but it also changes the fruit character of the wine. If you like that, then you're in good shape. You can age this wine pretty much as long as you want. But if you only find yourself preferring younger wines, then don't bother. Don't put stuff away if you're not going to actually enjoy that flavor.
I love the wines change in the glass. To me, that's a characteristic of very well made wines. The first one, the JML, I'm going back to it, has a little bit of florality to it. I love the aromatics, very perfumey nose. And then this one is a monster in a good way. It's a gentle monster, and I'm getting olive here. I'm getting so different, so many different things. Gorgeous wines. What's next, if anything, for Secret Door? You're going to stick to these two labels, or you're working on something special? Anything that you want?
Unfortunately,
looking for new doors.
Yeah, well, we're always looking for new doors. But after the 2021 vintage, Herondale, the grapes were recalled to their mothership winery. So I only got to make this from 2017 through 2021. So we have some new things coming with the 2022 vintage, which it's probably too early to really talk about, but we have a couple of new single vineyards, I think, that we can display as well. And the goal, I think, is to be able to create these single vineyard wines, but also to do a little bit more for JML, because I think that style is really one that is going to become even more popular over time, and I want to make sure that we have sufficient amounts to be able to make people happy.
Thank you so much, Donald, for this. Cheers. Mi gente, vengan a buscar estos vinos al Almacén del Vino. Son joyas para aquellos de ustedes que les gustan los vinos Cabernet Sauvignon elegantes, hechos al estilo bordelés, pero con la generosidad del sol de California, que da esa estructura, esa potencia, y es 100% Cabernet, no es un blend como ocurre con los vinos de Burdeos. Son dos joyas. Secret Door retails for around 140, 150, I think. JML 70, deliciosos vinos, vengan a buscarlos al Almacén del Vino, son para disfrutarlos ahora o para guardarlos un par de años porque se van a poner mejores. Thank you, Donald. Salud, mi gente, dale subscribe y gracias por ver.